Welcome to the Final Four of the Oil Championship Playoff Series. We have another doubleheader today between Amsoil and Penrite, as well as Schaeffer's and Pennzoil. Which two brands will advance to the final game? Today we're going to throw some very rigorous testing at each of these brands. So let's get the testing underway. How did Amsoil and Penrite make it to the Final Four? Amsoil won over Royal Purple and Kendall, and Penrite won over Modal and Amazon. Pennzoil won over Lucas and Redline, and Schaeffer's won over Mobile One and Quaker State. I sent new oil samples to an oil testing lab, and the results are very interesting. Even though we're comparing Amsoil to Penrite, I included several other brands that we've previously tested just as a point of reference. Anti-wear additives complement the base oil in preventing engine wear. More isn't always better. Penrite has a little bit more anti-wear additives than Amsoil, but they're very close. Later in the video, we'll compare how these brands compare regarding detergents and total base number. In the previous oil playoff episodes, we've seen just how good these motor oils are when they're new, but what about when they've been exposed to significant heat? We'll begin by adding 200 grams of oil into each container. We'll then heat the oil to approximately 425 degrees Fahrenheit for 80 minutes. I'll rotate the containers every 10 minutes just in case one burner is slightly hotter than the other. We're also going to monitor the temperature of the oil to make sure that they're all very close to the same temperature throughout the entire test. So why this test? Well, this test isn't exactly the same as a NOAC volatility test, which exposes oil to even more heat than this test. The purpose is to determine just how good these oils are at avoiding evaporation and thermal breakdown from the heat. Once this test is complete, we'll be using the cooked oil for the next two tests. There's clearly a lot of evaporation taking place with both brands, which is to be expected with this much heat. However, Penrite seems to be putting off more vapors than Amsoil. And right at 80 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and remove the oil from the heat and allow these to cool off. And when we come back, we'll go ahead and weigh the difference between the two products to see which experienced less evaporative loss. Okay, the moment of truth, we're going to find out how much evaporative loss occurred with each brand, beginning with Amsoil. Amsoil started off at 430.2 grams. It now weighs 426.27. That's a loss of 3.93 grams. Penrite started off at 411.31 grams. It now weighs 405.16. That's a loss of 6.15 grams. So Amsoil won the evaporative loss test. Before we start the next test, we're going to place the oil in a freezer that's going to cool the oil to 40 below zero Fahrenheit. This temperature is definitely pretty extreme. However, it'll make it very easy to figure out if heat exposure has had an impact on the performance of the oil. We'll begin cooling the oil now, and we'll come back to the test later in the video. The next test doesn't simulate engine operating conditions perfectly. However, the lubricity test provides great data on performance when it comes to film strength. Before beginning the test, I'm going to first calibrate the weight scales, weigh each bearing before and after the lubricity test to determine the loss of material. I'll also be measuring the size of the wear scar. The oil that we previously cooked, I'm going to heat it up again, this time to 260 degrees Fahrenheit for the test. This test will last right at 10 minutes. Amsoil is on the left and Penrite is on the right. The wear scar on the Amsoil bearing is clearly smaller than it is on the Penrite bearing. Amsoil clearly won the competition. Before we kick off the cold flow oil test, let's look at two additional oil qualities. Detergents and dispersants play a vital role in keeping an engine clean. Both Amsoil and Penrite contain more than most of the other brands we've previously tested. Another important characteristic of oil is its total base number. As fuel is burned in an engine, oxidation occurs. Oxidation causes acids to form in the oil, which can cause damage. To neutralize the acid, the oil needs base, or an alkaline. The alkaline concentration is expressed as the TBN. Amsoil has a TBN of 11.5 compared to 8.7 for Penrite. Both have a higher than average TBN compared to most of the other brands we've tested in the oil showdown. Since this is a team sport for the new and cooked oil. In order for a brand to win this contest, both the new and cooked oil for each brand must finish the race before the opposing team's new and cooked oil. Amsoil is in lane 1, cooked Amsoil lane 2, cooked Penrite lane 3, new Penrite lane 4. And new and cooked Amsoil don't seem fazed at all by the cold as they're quick out of the gate and moving fast down the straightaway. New Penrite is nearly ahead of the cooked Penrite. Team Penrite needs to find another gear if they're going to catch up with Team Amsoil. The cooked Amsoil seems as good as new and is nearly even with the new Amsoil. The cooked Amsoil barely finishes ahead of the new Amsoil, and Team Amsoil finishes ahead of Team Penrite by about 4 inches. New Penrite just finished ahead of cooked Penrite by about an inch. What a race by both teams. So to wrap it up, Amsoil won all the events and will advance to the championship game. Up next, Pennzoil and Schaeffer's will compete for the last position. Before the competition between Schaeffer's and Pennzoil begins, let's take a look at how they compare regarding anti-wear additives. Schaeffer's has more anti-wear additives than Pennzoil. Next, I'll add 200 grams of oil into each container and then we'll heat the oil to approximately 425 degrees Fahrenheit for 80 minutes. As expected, there's a lot of evaporation taking place with both brands. However, it seems like Schaeffer's is putting off a little bit more vapor than Pennzoil. Both brands have done very well in the past with heat exposure, but Pennzoil seems to be incredibly tolerant of the heat. After the oils cool down, we'll measure both containers to find out which oil experienced the least evaporative loss. It's been right at 80 minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and remove the oils from the heat, and when we come back, we'll check the oils to see how much evaporative loss occurred with each brand. Schaeffer started off at 394.67 grams. It now weighs 388.59. That's a loss of 6.08 grams. Pennzoil started off at 404.59 grams. It now weighs 400.4. That's a loss of 4.19 grams. So the victory goes to Pennzoil, which lost about 2 grams less than Schaeffer's. It'll be very interesting to see how new and cooked Schaeffer's and Pennzoil perform at negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Before we kick off our next test, we'll go ahead and place the oil in the freezer and leave it there overnight. Before we kick off the lubricity test, we'll go ahead and weigh each bearing and then we'll weigh the bearings once again once the test is complete. We'll test Schaeffer's first. Now that the Pennzoil has been heated up to 260 degrees Fahrenheit, it's ready to be tested. The wear scar between Pennzoil and Schaeffer's is about as close as I've seen it before. Pennzoil has a slightly larger wear scar than Schaeffer's, so Schaeffer's walks away with the victory. Before we kick off the Schaeffer's and Pennzoil cold oil flow test, let's check out the detergents and TBN numbers for both brands. Pennzoil actually has quite a bit more detergents and dispersants than Schaeffer's. However, both of them have more detergents and dispersants than most of the competition. Pennzoil has a slightly higher TBN than Schaeffer's, however, they're both above average. New Pennzoil lane 1, cooked Pennzoil lane 2, cooked Schaeffer's lane 3, new Schaeffer's lane 4. And Team Pennzoil is out of the gate quick with cooked Pennzoil nearly ahead of new Pennzoil. New Schaeffer's is third to hit the oil slide, then cooked. Team Schaeffer's is really going to have to pedal hard to catch up with Team Pennzoil. Pennzoil now has a 4-inch lead and it doesn't look like Schaeffer's is going to be able to close the gap. Pennzoil is just too fast with cooked Pennzoil crossing the finish line first around an inch ahead of the new Pennzoil. Team Schaeffer's is now heading down the home stretch with new Schaeffer's finishing about an inch ahead of the cooked. Great race by both teams. So Pennzoil won both the evaporative loss test as well as the cold oil flow test, while Schaeffer's won the lubricity test. So Pennzoil will advance to the championship game. Well, Penrite and Schaeffer's did an incredible job to make it this far in the playoffs, and I'm very impressed with those brands. I'd be very happy to use either one of those in one of my vehicles. Now, regarding the playoffs, it now comes down to Amsoil and Pennzoil. I'd really like to know your opinion. Which brand do you think is going to win this championship? I really look forward to your future video ideas as well. I always like reading your comments and hearing what you guys want to see. As usual, just want to say thanks so much for watching the video. Please take care, and I look forward to next time.